Welcome back. We're talking with Bob Blohm, our friend. He's over in Toronto at the moment. We're talking with him, but he's had a 10-year rendezvous over in China more recently, and he has a very real, deep understanding of that country from a very interesting perspective. And Bob, we had an hour. We're going to talk another hour about it and so forth. And I asked you then, what is the situation there? And you said that it's getting pretty bleak in terms of it being I don't want to say, you said, I think you recorded the 1930s Europe or something like that, but what is your assessment of the situation in China now in the year 2017 of the Christian era?
Well, it's becoming dangerous, and as I said, people don't discuss things freely. But basically, the party, it's becoming like Orwell's 1984,
Ye
basically,
gods.
and it's like social engineering on steroids. They're gone on,
Uh-huh.
and I'll explain this just to give an example in terms of religion. Yes, religion is tolerated by the party, although the government has an official policy that is anti-religion, namely atheism is consecrated as an official policy. But you're allowed to be religious. Too bad for you if you are, but you know, sorry for you, but
Well,
you're allowed to do that.
do they have a
Now,
do they have a religious acceptance or reglio association with the idea of Marxism itself? The religion is the
opiate of the people.
wonderfulness of the communist system, as Mr. Karl Marx and so forth and company proclaimed. Is that it? Is that the state religion?
Oh, if you, yeah, the equivalent of a state religion, you could say that. All right, but now when it comes to actual institution, religions, it's now illegal to expose children, that is minors, to expose minors to religion. It's illegal, including your own children. So children cannot go to church. You can't read the Bible to them at home. You can't teach them religion at home. That's all against the law now.
What is not against the
Isolate,
law? What
to
what can they what
isolate the, huh?
what is not against the law? Is it still permissible for the children to read tomes by Karl Marx
Oh,
or
of course.
communist propaganda, if that's the right term,
Well,
like you said it was in '30s with fascism in Europe?
for sure.
Is it
And
that bad?
yeah, for sure. And of course, it's not criminal for children, for minors, to read religious things. It's criminal if an adult gives it to them, makes it possible to them. Suppose the government, or the police would look into where they got the material and who gave it to them, and so on. So, it doesn't quite go that far, but basically the intent is to isolate the youth of the country from religion. Leave that as an adult experience only. Now, the biggest problem is what's called the social credit system that's now developed.
The
We know
what?
what a credit rating system is.
Uh,
So they have a thing now called social credit. You're rated not just for your banking credit, in other words, your borrowing payback experience. You're rated for everything you do, all of your behavior. So the objective is to monitor individuals 24/7 through their cell phones primarily.
yeah,
And,
they.
it's just ridiculous. So and then there are penalties assessed. So in other words, and it also can apply to speech or things you post online and so on, or that you're reported to be doing, such as teaching children or exposing children to religion and so on. You get demerits, and so if you want to take a plane, you want to take a train, you're actually disqualified from that. You actually get a score. Everybody in society gets a score, and so this is quite the ominous. The problem is the whole system is just seat of pants. It's like written on the back of an envelope. There's no science behind it. No, they haven't consulted social sciences to say, "Hey, what is a good predictor? We're gonna we're gonna develop this index, this metric, to measure whether a person is good for society or not." So, what determines behavior that's pro-social or anti-social? And so that we can rate it. They haven't talked to sociologists, psychologists, people around the world, experts to try to construct some scientific measure or predictor of if people behave this way, society, even to measure what is the good of society. If so even the objective is vague. The objective really is longevity of the Communist Party. So what behavior in society is going to assure the continued existence of the Communist Party? That's the objective. And so this whole system is totally unscientific, but it uses big data, all the stuff on cell phones, privacy versus the government. The government will know everything you do every minute of the day, thanks to your cell phone, thanks to IT, and so on.
Yeah, right. Well, we just had to communicate with a friend of ours who helps us very, very familiar with the internet and all the technology involved in that. Helps us a lot with the getting the things set up and everything. And he is from China. And he just made it familiar to us is that nobody has credit cards or anything there. Everything is done by cell phone. Everything, all the negotiation, you go and buy a pack of groceries, it's done on a cell phone. Everything is just done on a cell phone over there.
That's right. No cash.
That's the way you can track everything.
No cash even. But think of all the information that gives about you. And not only that, China has cameras everywhere.
Yeah, well.
Cameras everywhere.
What are their attitude? What is the attitude of the people in China or the Communist Party toward Soviet Russia with their claims to having a Marxist system there?
Well, the official policies they regret. The official policies they regret the current Russian government. They think the current Russian government, in a sense, is illegitimate because it shouldn't exist because the Communist Party made a mistake. They should have stood firm and backed and opposed Yeltsin and so on when the party, basically they said the army, military didn't stand up for the party, and so the party disintegrated. So that's the official policy of the government as far as the Russian system.
They're claiming to be the carriers of the great message.
There you
of
go.
The Communist
That's right.
Manifesto. Is that it?
Well,
they're the embodiment
in a sense, that's right. And here you have it's sort of the wet dream of the Soviets. The Soviets collapsed, for economic reasons, and plus we put them on their back by developing Star Wars and so forth, which the Japanese helped us finance.
Yeah, true.
So on, and put their military on there, so they couldn't keep up with that kind of spending and so on. And so now the Chinese, it's the opposite. They have practically unlimited resources and so on. So they're like what the Soviets were on steroids because now they have the power. Now they have all this economic wherewithal to pursue their Leninist agenda. And this is what we didn't think of. Those of us who proposed cooperating in the development in China's economic development and opening up didn't didn't take into account. We thought it would fundamentally change thinking or the power political system, whereas the core of that system has remained. And now it has all this economic wherewithal that our trade gave them, and so on, to take over the world, basically. And that's what we're facing.
Well, if you look at the world and you look at it and so forth, we live in an incredibly pregnant time. You and I have talked about this over the decades, Bob, but we live in a time of qualitative transformation, don't you think? In terms of what's going on in terms of extended consciousness and the technology and so forth?
Yes.
Yeah.
But
It's not
the
your
Chinese are
normal
taking
period.
this and turning it around and making it into a nightmare.
I,
There are cameras all over China. China will be able every minute of the day, not just from your cell phone, but to know where you are and what part of the country. All these public cameras in public places and so on. If you're there and the camera sees you, it can immediately identify who you are by name, where you're from, and so on. This is incredible. No privacy whatsoever.
well, it's a paradox when you think about how they have the idea of representing the masses, but it ends up there being a almost religious concept, acceptance of the ideas of social Leninism.
That's right.
Yeah, and
And it's taking over
it's
using
almost a
these tools
religious connection to that.
to commandeer and it's basically socially engineer, control, and manage society. It's exactly what it is. And to preserve, most important in China, is to preserve the jobs, the prerogatives, and the privileges of
the Communist Party,
of the leadership,
of the
and the
leadership.
mechanisms of the party and so on that should exist in complete tranquility and assurance, no instability. Everyone's behavior under control. Now, this system, this social credit system, is a substitute for a legal system. So, what's the modern mainland Chinese way? Oh, develop a legal system. All these statutes, develop a legal history, case history, and so on. Have data history to, if we want to develop social measures and so on. Forget about it. Forget about it. We will just, we'll do something quick and dirty. We'll take all this big data that we suddenly have, and so on, and we'll use it and we'll arbitrarily construct some metric and so on to keep people under control. All right, and we don't care if it's right, we don't care if it's scientific, as long as it serves our purpose to keep us in power. That's all.
It's odd, isn't it, that a socialist critique of things, some of our leading intellectuals have been very interested in doing something for the underclasses of the world. The history of the world is one of more or less feudalism, and there would be 2 or 3 people living in the castle, and we were all trained to be serfs in a historical context. They were being trained how to be a loyal serf to the lord of the castle or to the king of the country, or all these kind of things we had for a history that
Yes.
James Joyce had Daedalus say the history, history is a nightmare from which we're attempting to awaken. And many of the thought patterns in the world now is that we may be at a time of a qualitative, not a quantitative, up the road of 200,000 years of our existence, but we're at a point of qualitative liberation of the human society, which is in the reach of us now, and that they have that dream of a socialist dream of having universal justice for all, so that we didn't have to all be like serfs on a feudal estate, which is the lot that most people see their way in terms of a power elite that were all capitalists that had all the assets ownership in their own class, and that kind of leadership is characteristic of the world now. We've got a few people at the top of the world leadership, and they have all the assets, and they're being trained to be like serfs on a feudal estate in the minds of many, and that there needs to be some sort of a qualitative transformation of liberating everybody. And in order to do that, you have to take aim at the people who are living in the castle, and that's part of the Marxist reading of the world society. That's called progressivism in the minds of a lot of what is called the left, you know?
But that's not what happens in China. All these leaders and so on have amassed, the families have amassed huge wealth. Now they'll say they want socialism for everybody else. All right, everything divided. Okay, so people are well off, but the essential element is control. A society can't be left to its own devices. We have to have micromanaged control of every individual in society, controlled by whom? Controlled by us. On
But
what basis? What
it,
is the basis of your entitlement to this?
it's
Out
really,
of
it's
which
really, it's really something to have that be the situation, when after all, that was always what was attributed to Nazism or
exactly
to
it is
fascism.
Nazism. It's a
That's a
Nazi version.
fascist
It's
take on things in the
national.
name
It,
of the masses, which is
it's
almost a
national
joke. He had the
socialism.
same thing, did he not?
Yeah, Hitler gave all kinds of things to German workers, gave them all kinds of social benefits and so on. People were happy, but this was national socialism, okay? And these people, in terms of the
So that's
leadership in
fascism,
China,
not communism. It's a fascistic thing that you've
that's
got
what it
going.
is.
Yeah, it's a
That's what it
fascism.
is. And there isn't much difference when it comes down to spreading the wealth and so on. Sure, spread the wealth, but that's fine. So everybody has enough to eat, everybody and so on. But life is controlled. It cannot bear the aleatory or uncertainty or
Yeah.
probabilistic free development of the society to go whichever way. Oh no, this has to be controlled by us, based on our superior wisdom. We are here. The Communist Party is here by force of arms, out of the barrel of a gun, as Mao said, and so on.
Well,
And and we
that
have to
was the
be in
message.
charge
Well,
for this to
that
happen.
was the message of Mussolini. That was the message of Adolf Hitler and the fascists. It wasn't the message of the Communist Party, except it seems to have been able to adapt that kind of an attitude toward things in the case of China. And so it's kind of a conundrum in a way.
Well,
They
communism,
say
though,
masses of the
some,
world unite, you know? Yeah.
But listen, you still had much of that system in the Soviet Union under Stalin. It was
Yeah,
all
right,
top-down
right, right, right.
command and so on. It wasn't people spontaneously doing their things
Yeah.
and so forth. Okay, now, you know, so keep in mind that the fact of all these cameras and so on around tracking you and doing everything. There, there's also there's also the phenomenon of the gulag.
Yeah.
In Western China, and this has to do with religion and so on. All the Muslims are now being put in labor camps. There's a system of labor camps, maybe 10% or more. Some say 20, some say 30% of the Muslim population in Western China is forced labor. They're put in re-education camps. If you don't have a job or something, oh, no problem. We're going to take you away from your home, put you in a re-education camp, and we're going to teach you a trade. And we're going to teach you to repeat Communist Party slogans, to worship Xi Jinping, to denounce your national language, don't to denounce your religion, and so on. To speak Chinese because Uyghurs they have a Turkish type language,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
that up and to pledge allegiance to the leadership of the Communist Party. This is what you have now in Western China, and this is a test bed.
Uh,
This is going to be used. That'll spread out. Police departments from all over the country that are visiting these places, and they're going to spread that to the rest of the country internally.
it's really an odd world we live in, don't you think? It's kind of odd because everybody's claiming that there's this great awakening coming. There's a great opportunity for coming to the end of 200,000 years of our existence on the
Yes.
planet. That's how long we've been here as a species. And we're coming to the point where we got all this capability of extended consciousness in the form of technology. There's all of this changing the world moment. Did you hear something new, Bob? I don't know if you've heard it not. I'm a geographer.
Yeah.
You're an economist or something, like that. But I was a geographer, and I like geography because you could be interested in everything and not be specialized in that sort of thing. But
Mhm.
one of the coterie of the learned societies, and there's progress being made definitely in terms of understanding things. But we live in there was the Pleistocene, was a geologic era.
Yeah.
It was about 13 million years or so, and then there came a great uh, asteroid hit Yucatan. It had been ruled by the Tyrannosaurus rex and the reptilians. There was no evidence of anything human yet, and they were wiped out. And then we were introduced into the Pleistocene, and then the Holocene was developed about 7 or 8,000 years ago as a geologic era, a geologic strata. Now, the world intellectual community is coming around now, and they're saying that the mark of human activity on the planet has become so pronounced. Used to be we were at the, a Tyrannosaurus rex would have eaten us, or a crocodile or something. Or when we were in nature, we were scrounging around, as it were, like under the feet of larger beasts and so forth. But now they got it down to where they're declaring that the mark is so marked now that they're declaring a new geological era, and they're calling it the Anthropocene, and they're dating it to about 1970. They're saying there's a qualitative transformation taking place in 1970, that we're come to the end of the Holocene, the era in which we are apexing into a new era, geologically considered, that there's a major transformation taking place. And it's interesting that we get to the point where the weapons that we fought each other over the long haul have become species lethal.
Yeah.
Okay, species lethal. That is, we have the ability now, finally, in our warring one the other, and realpolitik and so forth, where we have the ability now, in terms of that exists already on hair trigger alert, that if they were to be unleashed, apparently from the modeling, it's only modeling, thank goodness, but if there was to be an unleashing of the weapons that exist, we used to have the bow and arrow, and then we had a sword, and we had all these kind of things. But now we've got these weapon systems, thermal and nuclear, and thermonuclear, and that if they were to be unleashed, it would mean the end of the whole Homo sapiens species.
Yeah.
A 200,000-year journey we've had up the evolutionary line. That's pretty amazing ability to transform things. Do you understand?
Right,
And
but
there's
at the
also
same
an
time,
equal opportunity.
Harold, your point as well. Humanity can destroy itself.
No,
But the
but
same
the
power
point being
behind
is,
that can do the opposite. Humanity can also improve itself.
well,
It
I was
has
going to
to.
just mention that as a particularly interesting part of the equation, because we have an equally significant in the names of some of our philosophers, one of which would be Buckminster Fuller, the greatest man who
Yeah.
ever did realize the implications of all the technological development, is that we have the capability. We've lived in a world where there were castles on the hill, and the mass of the people were serfs.
That's right.
They were not able to have any public anything other than their loyalty to the Lord. Okay, the world's still set up that way, and the serfs are in the people who own it are the people who have all the asset ownership of all the capability in the world, and there's still the need to have. We're still being trained to be serfs in terms of the way the world's organized. But we have
Right,
a
but he's also
capability. Wait a
saying
minute.
he's
They have a
also saying the
collective.
world has the ability, the resources and so on, to totally change this,
Well,
to
that's what I'm
totally
trying to tell
normalize
you,
this,
my
to make
brother.
it, to make,
Yeah, but that's
you
what I'm
know,
trying to tell you. In equally existentially significant, we're philosophers, right?
yeah,
We
I
like to think
understand.
on big patterns. We have an equally significant to the fact that we can destroy our
Yeah,
whole
we can
species
do,
for the
right.
first time, Bob. We couldn't have done that 100 years ago.
Yeah,
It's
I
so
know,
unique
but
to our
but
time.
listen, but yet the point you have to keep in mind,
Yes.
the Chinese, are in the process of taking this into its absurd conclusion. And this will be a sideline in history, but they were hijacking all this trend, all this technology to take it to this absurd conclusion, this obsessiveness. And I call this a kind of mental illness among that has been promoted, or it's a kind of mental anomaly that's been promoted by the Communist Party of China.
Well,
That's what I call self-referential. Everything, usually
yeah,
conceptual systems or mental systems that involve self-reference are perverse. Self-reference is short-circuiting and so on. And everything the Chinese Communist Party does, all the pronouncements are self-referential. They're all devoted to one and only one thing: the existence of the Communist Party. That's the end purpose of everything. So everything the Communist Party says and does is just declaratory.
Yes, right.
We are doing this in order for us to exist. Okay?
They got that
why are we
claim.
doing it?
Yes, I understand. They got that claim. So did Mr. Hitler. So did Mr.
Well, there you
Mussolini.
go.
You know, and
So
so do a
they're
lot of
using-
other people.
so this
We are the best
technology-
there is. Yeah. But the
So
point
this-
being, Bob, the point being is we have a capability of transcending the need over 200,000 years of having a serrated, there was scarcity at
Yeah,
a
I know.
level of haveness of the people of the world. We now have a capability of transcending and having a world where everybody can become a have. We
I
don't
know.
have to have have-nots
But
and
leave it to the
zero-sums.
Communist Party to squander that.
Well,
All right?
maybe.
And let me give you an example. In China,
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. At Beijing University, there was a group of Marxist students who started to demonstrate, and they've gone to labor sites elsewhere in China, companies where they refuse to pay the worker, and so on. You know, workers working for nothing, hoping they're eventually going to collect their wages and so on.
Yeah.
These bosses protected by the party, protected by the so-called All-China Labor Union and so on. And these students were traveling, going to these places to protest and to defend the workers and to express the original spirit of Marxism and so on. The basic revolution. These students, this movement was quashed and suppressed by the Communist Party. Although a couple of the leaders, they were, if they weren't put under house arrest, they were in jail and so on. So you have that absurd effect in China where the real Marxists are also persecuted because they're seeing, they're seeing happen in China the very things that the Communist Party was instituted supposedly to eliminate.
It gets hard to understand things sometimes, doesn't it, Bob?
Well, that's how absurd it is. And by the way,
what the hell's going on? I'd like to know. In terms of the world.
Well, let's put it this way: there's one issue where everyone outside of the Communist Party of China basically is agreed that this China threat, whether you're conservative, you're right wing, or you're left wing.
Right.
You're left wing, they abandon Marxism. You're right wing, they don't give freedom. If you're left wing, don't give freedom and so on. This is one of the issues in this country among Trumpians, Schumer, who's more anti-China than anti-Communist Party, than Chuck Schumer. If anything, if they want to fault President Trump, it would be that he's not hard on China enough. There is a consensus in this country, divided as we are, across this country, that this threat that this China threat is existential and is the most important threat facing humanity.
Does it link up with the link to Soviet Russia?
Except Soviet Russia is an enabler. They're a bit player compared to China in terms of GDP. Their economies like Spain, okay, Spain. All right, are they going to make it? They have a lot of military technology and so on that the Chinese would love to have. All right, and they provide energy to China. China's a net consumer. Russia's a net producer. So they get along and so on. But Russia's effectively a kind of bit player, and they're a peripheral player. The central issue is China. And now we have issues of espionage. We have all these Chinese students. The other day I checked, I was at Columbia, 18%, almost one-fifth of the student body of Columbia University comes from mainland China. They're mainland Chinese here on visas studying.
Really? That's really something, huh?
And well, they're vacuum cleaners.
Mm-hmm.
And India, the next country in line is India, 3.5% of Columbia's student body, and so on. More than half of the international students at Columbia are mainland Chinese, students and so on. For what purpose? To take all this information and so on and learn all this for the greater honor and glory of the Communist Party. This is the objective. I'm not saying all the students are doing this, but they can be coerced. The party tells them you have parents in China, they have career aspirations in China and so on. It all gets rolled together and they get pressured to go along in this direction. And then the pièce de résistance for this is Huawei. Now, we have Windows, the Windows operating system, or iOS, the Apple operating system and so on. Fortunately, the Chinese never developed those. There's no way they can develop an operating system. Who controls the operating system controls the system, in a sense, controls the world. The Chinese are never going to be able to develop, test, and have accepted an operating system for computers worldwide. No way, forget it. But they found something. They found one thing they could do was build hardware, build servers to control the internet network around the world. Cell phones, wireless, and so on, and wired.
Is that G5 coming along? Is that the G5 coming along now?
That's G5. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
5G.
right.
All right? If they can do this, they can build into that the ability of the Chinese military and the Communist Party to control what goes on everywhere in the world.
Well, I don't quite understand how the G5 is going to be associated with the western part of China. I don't see that. Do you?
Listen, it's associated with the western part of China through the Communist Party. It's not associated with the western. It's associated with the Communist Party of China. If they control that technology, they control those systems. Okay.
Well, who does control the G5? Who speaks for G5?
Not G5. It's
that
5G.
Facebook?
G5 is a bunch of
Android. Who represents
5G.
G5?
Listen, it's who provide. First of all, the technology is being developed. The Chinese government subsidizes it, makes it lower price. So Huawei gets lots of customers. Huawei manufactures all the hardware and then software to run this system. Okay. Once that system's up and running.
Wait a minute, are you talking about Android? You're talking about the G5 is run by the Communist Party of China?
What
happened to what happened to all the people that are involved in the internet,
like Cisco,
Facebook,
like Cisco Systems? You ever heard of them?
Of course.
Well, Cisco's a bit player now in the field because Huawei pushed them out of markets. Huawei offers everything cheaper because it's paid for by the Communist Party.
I don't know. Would you spell that out a little bit for me? I hadn't realized that the international the international information technology and so forth is all run by Western China. Is that what you're trying to say?
Not Western China, by the Communist Party.
By the Communist Party of
not
China.
Western China. The only reason I mentioned Western China is they're persecuting the Muslims in Western China. That's
well, they're criticizing them, but I don't quite understand what you're trying to say.
I'm trying to say that if they manufacture,
is G5 that's coming? It's coming now. Soon. It's going to be just a couple months. And is that a thing of communist China? Is that what you're trying to say?
It depends on equipment. Specialized equipment is required to operate 5G, okay?
I don't know. It's just a big jump. I know that. It's going to be
No,
tremendous.
listen, it's equipment.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah,
so
yeah.
forget about 5G as a concept for a moment. Think of
Well,
the equipment that enables 5G, and that all of that equipment gets, basically, most of that equipment gets manufactured by mainland China. And
is that a true? Wait a minute. You got chapter and verse on that problem? The
yes,
main components and intellectual property and understanding of the
yes.
G5 is in the hands of the Chinese communists?
No, I'm saying the equipment that provides, first of all, they are involved in developing the standard, and they will develop the standard and or try to have the standard developed in ways that is convenient for them and for their equipment.
Well, where
And
did that come from? I don't understand. I don't remember having seen that anywhere.
well, now you're seeing it. Now, what I'm
Okay,
trying
share
to
it with us
explain
then.
is all the equipment. They are the major provider. Forget about Cisco. They pushed aside Cisco.
Okay, go
They're
on,
the
spell
world
it out.
Cisco
Spell it
now.
out.
But
Yeah.
they're not like Cisco. No political party controls Cisco. Cisco doesn't have to do what the U.S. government tells them to do.
Yeah,
And
you're right. You're right.
Ericsson doesn't have to do that. Nokia doesn't have to do that. Samsung doesn't have to do that. But Huawei does. They have to obey the Communist Party.
Who does?
Okay? Now, if the Communist Party and the Chinese military tell them, build into your system this feature and that feature and that feature, so that when push comes to shove, we can go in and control that equipment.
Well,
We can control that equipment.
That would be a wet dream of anybody building in that world where they can take control over the internet. That would be a pretty good thing to be able to try to.
That's what they're
maneuver
doing.
for.
So
Yeah.
they would be able to cut off a country, for example, or if we were in a war with China, you know, there would, God forbid, they would be able to disable
Have you
parts,
got,
you know.
Bob, we're old friends. Have you got chapter and verse on who has control over the international intellectual?
No, that is an objective. That is what Huawei is doing. Their growth has been built around the singular objective of controlling the network infrastructure of the internet.
Well, there's
okay?
been a lot of other
They can't control the operating system. They can't control Windows. They can't control iOS, but they can control the hardware. Okay? And that's what if Huawei does this, Huawei will build in spyware.
Wait a minute, you're going very fast. What's Huawei?
Huawei is a company, Huawei.
And is that a Chinese company?
That's a Chinese company, and after we talk, you can go look it up. They
I want you to
dominate.
send me
They
data
are now the biggest telecom manufacturer in the world.
Okay,
Forget about AT&T. Forget about all these old names you heard of. They're all junk. They're all gone. Huawei is now the biggest producer of telecom equipment in the world, and it's only growing by leaps and bounds every year.
Now, slow down a little bit. You're on a tear here.
Yeah.
You got a good roll going of the dice here now, and I want to go for another pass or something here. You know, you're moving pretty quick for me. It sounds like you're down on Lower Broadway somewhere, spelling a tune or something like that.
No, down in the
Are
bowel.
you going to send me you're going to send me, because we're old friends, you're going to send me the detail on where this information and chapter and verse on the information.
Well, this is a lot of Americans
G5 and the mechanism. You're going to send me the information with details, right?
Yeah. The danger, Harold, is what I'm trying to tell you, as part of their strategy, is if they can control the global network, they can basically, first of all, get all the information they need. They can use it to spy. They can find out any traffic, any communication conducted. They could intercept, all right, and spy on everything. And so there are no secrets anywhere. So they could be like God. They would be omniscient. They would know everything. Number two, they could use it to achieve their end by coercion, by saying, oh, if you don't do this, or if this is done wrong, they create problems or make the system inoperable. or you're going to be, you don't want to get into a war or a battle with them because they're going to disable part of your economy. They'll shut down your electric power system. They'll have ways or switches in that equipment
Who,
that can eventually do that.
Bob, have you got a particular book or treatise or something that's been out on the bestseller list with the information validating what you're saying? Or are
Yes,
you just making it up out of
first
whole
of all,
cloth?
it's in the newspaper every day, in the
Oh,
New York
okay.
Times, the Washington Post, and the Wall Street Journal. Number one. Number two, the U.S. government has issued several reports already on this subject, beginning with the Congressional Committee in 2012.
Go
The
on.
China, I forget there's a Congressional China Committee, all right, that addressed the Huawei situation back in 2012. They even went to China to visit Huawei and so on, and they asked the CEO of the company. They said, if the Communist Party tells you to spy, what are you going to do? And he couldn't answer the question because it's the law in China that every Chinese, every company has to cooperate with the Chinese government in matters of security and
Well, you didn't want
espionage.
him to have to break the law.
What? Well, that's right. The company.
I'm making a joke, okay?
Yeah,
It's called a
yeah, yeah,
J,
yeah,
a
yeah.
broma, a bro, a
No,
joke.
you're right.
Yeah.
So just think of what happens in this country.
Yes, sir.
If the government wants Microsoft or somebody to do something, Microsoft, well, first of all, you pay for it.
Yeah.
That's not the case in China. The party or the military, they don't have to pay for this. They just tell the company, you have to do this.
Who of the reporters on these matters of international communication and so forth are the most authoritative that would be able to make this clear to a great number of people like myself who find
It's
it
in the
very, very
process.
interesting? Where is
It's
the
in,
chapter and verse? What chapter
it's
and verse do we go
it's
to?
in the news cycle. It's all over the news. It's
No, no,
on
no, no,
TV.
no. A book. Has there been a book? Has there been an article, a particular series of articles? New York Times, Washington Post, or
I cited the government report, the congressional report
now,
in
could you spell it out?
2012.
What is it? How does a person get to it? How does a
You just
person
go
get
online.
attacked on
You
the
just go
report?
online. You do a Google search. You put Congress Huawei report.
No, no. Specifically, what do we type into our computer to get
I
in
just
on
told you.
understanding this?
No, it's search engine. You just type Huawei, okay, Congress.
Quality Congress.
No, Huawei, the name of the
Yeah,
company.
spell it letter by letter.
Huawei.
Okay, do it again. Do it again
H.
for the people. No,
H.
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 Go on.
U.
U.
A.
A.
W.
W.
E.
E.
I.
I. H-A-W-H-I.
No, it's not H-A. It's Huawei. 6 letters.
Okay, good. Thank you. That's something that is worth.
So what you do is you put that and the word Congress and the word report in the Google search engine, and you'll come up with it right away.
Okay, well that's really interesting, and that will show this kind of a situation to people that will find it very, very interesting, don't you think?
Well, for sure, and it's, as I say, it's in the news every day. It's on National Public Radio every day. It's on the network news. It's on cable every day now.
I've never seen
like
that. I've never seen those letters on a screen in television. I watch television a lot. We got 1,998 channels here in Manhattan Network.
Well, let me tell you the conclusion for this.
I've never seen that acronym.
Let me give you a fortunate conclusion before we close.
Yeah, okay.
Last Thursday, President Trump signed an order to forbid U.S. companies to do business with Huawei, okay, unless they get a special permit from the U.S. government, all right? Now, Huawei's cell phones, they make cell phones, the second biggest cell phone provider now after Samsung. They're bigger than Apple, okay? And unless they and many of their components, their chips and so on, are made by companies in this country. So we export them to them. Anyway, all of that will end. Okay,
All that will what?
and every day this news, especially about Trump's decision and now the aftermath. Now they're giving now it'll be delayed by 3 months. Give Huawei and its customers time to adjust. But what I'm saying is this: this puts in front of the Chinese government and the Communist Party, it puts forth a rule. You cannot have a system like China's, a political system like China's, that's a single party dictatorship, a party state, and be a world class economy at the same time. You have to choose one or the other.
Say it again. Say that again as a message to our viewers.
You cannot have an authoritarian one party system. You cannot be an authoritarian one party system major economy, okay? Major economy as part of the world system. You have to be one or the other. In other words, if you want to keep your political system, no political reform, keep that authoritarian system, you have to give up the idea that you can be a major player in the world economy. Okay? Because in IT, in information technology like Huawei, nobody will accept your equipment. Nobody will accept it because they won't trust you. They'll trust every other country. Nobody suspects South Korea is going to spy on them or sabotage this or that. Nobody worries about Finland going to do that and so on. But everybody worries, what is the Communist Party going to do in the furtherance of their objective? So nobody will buy that equipment specifically because of the nature of the Chinese political system.
Well,
so it puts forth very starkly that if you aspire to provide the technologies of the future, the communication, specifically communication technology of the future, there's no way you can do that and have an antiquated imperial political system like you have in China. You have to make up your mind.
Well, if nobody would buy it,
that's right.
We got to trust the markets. Don't we have to trust the markets and the wisdom of the market? If nobody will buy it, that system isn't going to be bought. It won't work.
That's right. Now,
here's some alternative to that. What's
the
alternative?
Punchline. Here's the punchline.
What's the punchline?
We are in trade negotiation with China right now. Okay?
Yeah.
Trade negotiation. The good guys in China, the reformers, those are the people that come and talk to us.
Who are they? Who are they? I haven't made it clear to me. Who are they?
I know who these guys are. They're good people.
Okay. I'm happy to hear that. Yeah.
All right, but the problem is in the Chinese party, in the Communist Party, those guys are just viewed as technicians, as plumbers. They don't have any influence. The bad people have influence, but they don't give a rear end for what the rest of the world thinks or goes on in the rest of the world. They're all focused on their own country and on themselves primarily. You remember what I think about self-reference and perverse self-referential thinking. Yeah. Anyway, these guys are the ones that, so when we're negotiating with China, the Chinese negotiators, they're great guys. They think like us. They want reform in China. But when they go back to China, they hit a brick wall because all these old hardliners are there in control of the party and they can't convince them. So they come back, then the trade negotiation fails because they agreed to something. They said, yeah, we agree, that's a good idea. They go back to China, the hardliners who control Chairman Xi, they say, no, we don't want this, so on. So the guys are left empty-handed and have to go back, tail behind the legs and say, and tell the U.S., oh, sorry, we can't do this, okay? We need to give those guys bargaining power. When they go back to China, now they can say, if you don't listen to us, you're going to lose Huawei. You're going to lose that business. This country is going to become weak because we're going to lose all these economic opportunities because we insist on having this stupid authoritarian political system. And if they can show that, and the U.S. actually does cut off Huawei, these reformers suddenly have much more bargaining power inside their own country.
So
And then they can,
the good guys could come to the fore.
that's right.
That's what you would
So,
like to have happen in the
so
country of China.
the bad is actually good. Cutting off Huawei from the rest of the world and so on is good because the reformers can use that as an argument to say, you see, you hardliners.
Well, it sounds like they're fighting. It's like two mob guys fighting for control of the territory.
Well, that's right.
That's
but
what
they'll
it
say,
is. Sounds like an
they'll
old
say,
mob bod.
I know, but the good guys
And they came
will say,
up with a better deal, so they went out. Now you don't want to let them have the benefit of the deal they've come up with.
well, what they're saying is, we lost this. This was you guys' fault. It's your fault for insisting on keeping the same political system and so on and not adopting reform, not listening to us. Okay, that's exactly what they'll do.
It sounds like somebody who's singing the blues because somebody else beats them to the finish line.
Well, it's not quite as equivalent.
That's the way it works in the markets, isn't it? Whoever gets there first,
what?
they got there first. Now you don't want them to have the benefit of their winning position.
Well, that's not the point. I'm saying the reformers need bargaining power. And if they can show that their adversaries' policy is actually disadvantageous, all right? They win. They have bargains. They have influence.
It's a public relations problem, isn't it?
No, it's a negotiating problem. It happens in all discussions, you know. But it's a real issue when real impact, when there are real economic effects.
Absolutely. I can hardly think of a more important issue confronting mankind now.
Well, absolutely. So it makes those bad guys, those hardliners, those Leninist communists lose face. It makes they say, "Oh, you guys think, thanks to you, China's great. We have all this great stuff." Actually, that's not true. It's thanks to you. China is losing. We're losing this business and so on because of your idea. So it's not you that have made China great. It is you that are making China worse and lose. That's what that's what the reformers need to be able to say.
Bobby, have you thought about joining the presidential race for the president of this country so you could have real power to force that down the throats of anybody who would stand in your way?
No. Because I don't want to force anything down anybody's throat. I just want to get the word out.
You just want the logic of good thinking to really.
I want to get the word out. And so on.
Irrational stuff like that. God, it's so good to talk to you, and I know I'm so proud. I'm so proud to be a friend of yours, and we go back so far. And I don't want you to forget me when you get to the top of the world. I want you to remember little old me, who helped get you on television and gave you a leg up and everything in this kind of a thing. It's so.
Hey, Harold, I have to say this. Let me this final word.
All right.
You are a national treasure for having history's longest running talk show, Conversations with Harold Shanner. It is the longest running talk show in television history, not just U.S. history, television history.
Well, my mother thought that. My mother really just said to tell me that every time I called her. That was good. It was good to get it from somebody like yourself who really's got some backing to that. But I'll tell you, it's so good to be seeing you. Bob, we got to get together. Do you ever get down to Manhattan anymore, or are you just
Of course. Well, I was just there, but you were a little busy.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, so you're looking good, You're looking good. And everything's up to date in Kansas City. Everything's up to date in your itinerary. Everything's working out well. But it seems to me we got a couple more little problems left, right?
Right.
Isn't it a hell of an interesting world we're in, right? Like that? Yeah. So good to talk to you. Now, when am I going to see you? You're going to send me a bunch of stuff, aren't you, on the internet now?
Well, I guess, all right, one thing I'd like, send me the links to these interviews when you get them set up so I can see the link.
Well, with all due respect, there's a good possibility that these programs will be available to the whole wide world
Great.
by about midnight tonight.
Oh, really?
It'll
Okay,
all
so
be on YouTube, free of charge, of Manhattan Neighborhood Network. And we're proud to be able to be with Josie Ann here doing all the work, making sure that everything's working out well. And it'll be open to the world to tune in to get the real story on the real story of the real story of the real story of the ages that we're now engaged in putting together. And I look forward to see your smiling face soon, you know, in person, okay?
Yep.
Okay, Bob, thank you so very, very much. It's good to be in what? No. What?
2 more minutes.
We got 2 more minutes. Say something, Bob. Say something
Well,
meaningful.
no,
We got 2 minutes. 2 minutes. This is it. 2 minutes only, Bob. 2 minutes.
I know.
The clock is ticking.
I want to comment that you got me. I know you got me fired up finally.
Yeah,
in the end.
right.
We got a hot finish. We had a kind of cold beginning. I was a little.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Well, say
droning
something
on
meaningful.
there. We finally, you got me fired up. So.
It's down only to 35 seconds now. Say something meaningful right now.
Well, I've enjoyed it, Harold, and I'll circulate the links to the program. Make sure you send them to me. So
absolutely. You listen. You're going to get it first. Listen, Bob. Are you listening to me?
Yes.
You're
sure.
going to listen.
Yes.
We're long friends. We've had beer together. You're going to get everything that's coming to you. Do you understand the meaning of that?
Yes.
All right, good. I think that's a good way for us to sign off. Thank you for viewing Conversations and Robert Blohm. We had another minute, so we got to think of something more to say. Say something else really meaningful. Oh, we got to show the graphics. Here we go like that now. So good. You're looking good, man. You're really looking good, yeah?
That's not to do.
Where do you call home now?
Well, what I wanted to say is an exact location right now. I am in Fort Erie, Ontario.
But that's where you're living over this night. Tonight, you're sleeping there. But where is home? Where is your home?
Well, it's basically here in Toronto. Office is in Toronto.
You have an office? Where is your home?
It's
where
here,
are you
really.
living?
It's here. Fort Erie.
Fort Erie. Do you have an address? Do you want to give it to the audience so that they could come and ring your doorbell to get the real scoop on the world? No.
It's a historic place. There were important battles fought here.
But it's Port Erie. Is that the town?
No, Fort. F-O-R-T.
Fort. What?
Erie.
Yeah. But Fort.
Erie, Lake Erie, Fort Erie.
I know, that's where I used to live, right down there in Detroit, across.
You know, I used to go.
I was on a farm out there in that part of the world. You know,
Buffalo is
I
right
hated farming. It was hard work. Yeah.
Buffalo's right across the river, just facing.
We used to go there to get a beer when it was only 18 years old and needed to get a beer. Good to see you, Bob. We'll be in touch. Over and out for now. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Can I ask something? Can you send me the same link, please?
Can you send it to Josie Ann, too?
I don't send it. You send it.
Oh, I'll send it to you.
I'll send it
on